Welcome to Season 5 of the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we talk with enterprise and technology platform leaders about the people, processes, and platforms that make marketing and customer experience successful, scalable, and sustainable. This is what creates an Agile brand. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom, advisor and consultant for Fortune 1000 marketing and CX leaders and teams as principal and chief strategist at GK5A, and best-selling author, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and Agile certified coach. The Agile Brand podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To sign up for the Agile Brand newsletter and get the latest insights and articles on marketing technology and CX, or to purchase a copy of my latest book, House of the Customer, go to gregkihlstrom.com. You can also find all my books on Amazon and other retailers. And now on to the show. Today we're going to talk about customer education to improve the customer experience. And we'll be talking about how to improve the employee experience through education as well. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Jack Foster, CMO at WorkRamp. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. Why don't we get started by you giving a little background on yourself as well as a little bit about what WorkRamp does?
I'd love to. So yes, I am the CMO at WorkRamp. I've been at WorkRamp for just over a year and a half, helping to build out the marketing function and marketing team. So it's been a really fun 18 plus months doing that. And I'm sure we can talk a little bit about that as we go through, go through the show. But WorkRamp, we are the learning cloud. So we power all of your employee and customer learning on one single platform. So think, on the employee side, everything from powering onboarding through talent development, leadership development, compliance and security training, really any training or learning program that you would need internally can be powered by WorkRamp. And we also do that for customers and partners as well. So if you have a customer education program, which is of course one of the topics we'll go through today, or partner enablement, those are top use cases for our solution. So help reduce costs, help reduce, the number of tools that you need to use in order to power all of your learning. I've spent about 15 plus years in B2B tech marketing, have worked at a number of different companies, public companies like CA Technologies and SurveyMonkey, which rebranded to Momentive, and startups like Lever, and now, of course, WorkRamp. So yeah, very excited to be here and a lot to cover today, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. No, looking forward to this. So yeah, let's start with talking about the value of customer education. So most people listening that work in marketing and customer experience would probably agree that an educated customer can be the most valuable type of customer. But there can often be questions about when and how to educate them so that everybody, customer as well as the business, gains the most value. So let's talk about a few ways to do this. And we'll start with the onboarding process. Question to you, what should brands be considering about both the initial customer experience as well as long-term loyalty at this onboarding stage?
Yeah, so I think that it's so important, right, that customers see a very fast time to value. The more quickly that you can get your customer up and running and using your product and seeing value in what they've purchased, the stickier you're going to be, the happier, they're going to be with that purchase, the better they're going to be able to show ROI. And so really from the moment that, a contract is signed, like you want to get into onboarding your customers as effective and as fast as possible. And of course, in the B2B world, many companies have customer success teams, implementation teams that, manage that process. But customer education and, what we would call something along the lines of like scaled customer education or digital customer success, having resources that are on demand that also can complement, right, what your implementation or CS team is doing is just going to, again, add that value to customers. If you're teaching them where to go to find answers, not, relying on your team, right, to have to be able to answer everything, you're going to save your company costs. There's efficiencies there, but also it's going to help the customer see that time to value as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So it's critical that, you're really thinking through what are the different touch points, both from a people perspective and from a digital perspective in order to get that customer up and running. And especially in today's environment, we're all like thinking about how can you get efficiencies? How can you scale your organizations? I mean, this can be a really effective cost saver for your
Yeah.
company. It can help you reach more customers. There's just so many benefits to having customer education resources available really from the get go.
Yeah. And so, one of the things you mentioned as far as uh, the benefits of a good onboarding process is to get the customer utilizing the product more. So let's talk a little bit about more about that. So, with product utilization, why is it so important? And, how do successful brands use education to really increase utilization of the product?
Yeah, I think that utilization is just an indicator of, again, are they going to actually, stick around and
Yeah.
are they actually seeing value? Now, of course, there's other things that go into that. It's really interesting, actually. One of our customers, Quantum Metric, I was talking to their director of customer enablement. Her name's Chauncey, and she actually presented at our last big conference, WorkRamp Learn. And one of the things that was just so enlightening in my conversation with her was that, their whole, one of their North Star metrics at Quantum is product utilization, like how quickly, are their customers adopting. That's a huge,
Yeah.
North Star metric for them. But she also made this really great point that it's not, it's also, are they not just using your product, but are they effective at using your product? Like, are they using less clicks, right? To go get to the outcome that they need? Are they actually like know how to use the product, not just that they are using the product? And
Yeah.
that was just such an incredible insight because it's true, right? It's not only just about like are people in there, how many users do you have in there? Is the company like using the product in general? It's also, are they using it effectively? And how can you help them use your product more effectively so that they really become power users and experts? And so I think, again, that, when it comes to customer education, what you really need to look at is, okay, where are the areas people might be getting tripped up, or what are the questions that, customers have as they're onboarding onto the product, or where you might see, areas where they might need improvement. And then you create the right content to help them get better at doing that. And the more you can scale that content, obviously, the better it is for your own organization. But really comes down to, what do you want them using? What are the customers going to get the most value out of, and make sure that that's discoverable, that they know how to use those features within your product. And then also just like get more effective at using the product, not just spending 100 clicks to get to the
Right.
outcome, but like get there as fast as possible. So those are some of the ways I think that we think about product utilization and how it kind of connects to customer education.
Yeah. And so how does your product WorkRamp approach this customer education uniquely?
Yeah, so our customer learning cloud is designed to host a customer academy. So it's a branded, you can brand it in your own brand so that it looks and feels like a part of your organization. But really, it's the area that you can send customers to go consume the content that you want them to, whether it's for onboarding or ongoing customer education. But what's really amazing about WorkRamp is, one, we eat in our own restaurant, if you will. We want people to be able to get up and running very quickly with their customer education program. So our solution is very easy to deploy. We want our customers to see fast time to value. And so very easy to deploy. And then, another thing that's amazing about our product is that we know that people learn in different modalities, right? So some people, may like to learn from video. Some people may like to read. You want to be able to test people's knowledge. All of that functionality, really engaging the customer, is a key part of how we've built our product. And so just, if you kind of like take a step back and think about, like, sometimes when you think about like training, or, even that word, like you have to go do a training, so that might not always have the best connotation. People
Right.
sometimes kind of think of it as like, oh, this is a chore. This is a to do. I'm going to have to just like get a bunch of boring, content. We are trying to change that narrative, right, with our product, and really create engaging learning experiences for customers. And so that's definitely a key differentiator in a way that we approach our product. And then, we like to also add ways that you can really incentivize, people to complete trainings. So things
Yeah.
like certifications are available within our customer learning cloud. That those are, you can have like badges, for example, when someone completes a training, they're able to share on LinkedIn. There's fun components to it like that. And then just kind of taking a big step back. If you think about kind of learning programs on the whole and learning across an organization, a lot of times, this is why, we have an all-in-one solution for employees and customers. A lot of times the education that customers need is actually very similar content to the education that maybe your employees would need,
Mm,
right? Like think about
mm,
an employee onboarding in sales. They need to get to know the product. There's a lot of crossover in terms of content, being able to use for both audiences. And so within WorkRamp, one of our big value propositions and differentiators is that by having all of your learning on one platform, you're able to use content across those audiences. So really saving time in that content creation process, which is a huge,
yeah.
huge benefit to our customers.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's good stuff. So how do you I would imagine some of the things like the badges and certifications might be a metric to kind of see that yes, people are progressing through, and how else are you encouraging your customers to measure success with customer education? How do you recommend that they do that?
Yeah, there's probably different buckets, right, that you can think about metrics. And so on the engagement side, of course, you're going to take a look at things like how many customers have enrolled in your, program in general, signed up for your customer education program. You could take a look at that as kind of a percentage of your customers on the whole. And, is that a metric that you're measuring more, looking at just like,
Yeah.
are we increasing basically the footprint within our customer base? And then there's like engagement metrics within the program itself. So, how many customers actually complete a training. You can also measure satisfaction, right? So, after they completed a training, what's their satisfaction rate?
Yeah.
And then, of course, you can start to get into more complex, I guess, or more longer term metrics. So things that we see our customers wanting to measure, like, okay, customers that have gone through, one or two more trainings, do we see an increase in product adoption, right? Kind of going back to what we were just talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Customers that have completed, X, Y, and Z, are they renewing at a higher rate, right? So really impacting like customer churn, customer retention is definitely like a long-term goal of many programs. And then, this one I really love. Are your customers like turning into brand advocates? That's really, one of the hugest benefits of
Yeah.
customer education. If you're strengthening your relationships with your customers, this is a great way to do that, right? Because they have a resource to go to. You're helping answer their questions. You're helping them get better at their jobs. You're helping their company, use your product and hopefully again see ROI in what they purchase from you. And so ultimately, like, are the customers that are engaged in your customer education program becoming advocates for you? That's really, I think, like, an aspirational and inspirational goal as well for many organizations.
Before we continue, let's take a quick break. If you're like many marketing leaders today, you're inundated with a need to improve the customer experience across an increasing number of channels and touch points, all while ensuring your team is performing well, innovating, and continuously improving. So how do you find the time to determine what's next for you, your team, your brand, and your customers? My company, GK5A, can help. Whether it is advisory services, evaluation of marketing technology platforms and solutions, or digital agencies and implementation partners, or assistance with creating strategic roadmaps and prioritization of efforts, we've done it all and served as an ally to Fortune 1000 brands in industries like financial services, healthcare, consumer electronics, professional services, and more. You can learn more about these services and contact us at www.gk5a. That's www.gk5a.com. Now let's get back to the show. So let's switch gears for a minute here, and you had mentioned some of the whether it's content creation or some of the efficiencies gained when some of the content can actually apply to not only customers but also employees. So I wanted to talk about how education platforms like this can build high performance teams through leadership and employee development. So in a similar way as we approached talking through customers, let's start with the employee onboarding process, because that's a critical part in anyone who's ever started a new job knows onboarding can kind of make or break how you feel about the place that you work for. So what should managers and leaders keep in mind regarding employee onboarding and this education component?
Yeah, not only can onboarding make or break how you feel about a company, it can literally impact your ability to be productive
Yeah.
and ramp,
Yeah.
as fast as possible. So having a structured and thoughtful onboarding program is honestly like a competitive advantage for organizations for new hires coming in.
Mm.
So, again, in a similar vein, I think, you're going to take a look at all company onboarding, right? There's probably going to be certain content that your entire cohort, whoever's joining, is going to see. So one example that we do at WorkRamp, actually, again, this idea of eating in our own restaurant. Of course, we have robust onboarding, and we use WorkRamp to do that, to onboard all of our employees. But I do for all of our new hire cohorts, a marketing overview, and we talk about where we sit in the market, competitive landscape, what is our marketing strategy, what are our priorities, right? And there's also WorkRamp guides, which using our products, where you can go get content on demand, kind of do it async in order to test your knowledge on some of these areas and just get up to speed. And so I think there's going to be that type of kind of blanket, if you will, or it's going to be relevant to everyone, where, people are just, of course, everyone wants to know what the marketing strategy is. And of course, there's going to be content like even, getting your IT and things set up that everyone's going to need to do. But then, of course, you're going to want to have role specific onboarding as well. So, again, huge use case for WorkRamp and our buyers is like sales enablement, revenue enablement, right? AEs are coming on board. They need to know how to sell the product. They need to know how to demo the product. You might want to do like a pitch certification so that, the manager and the leadership team feels confident that they're ready to go out and actually sell, and they know how to do that. And that can all be done, through WorkRamp and through having the right content set up. And so it just kind of goes back to, if you are investing in learning, it starts with the onboarding process and really carries through the entire employee life cycle.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, as far as touched on the onboarding process and a little bit on the rest, but as a leader in an organization, how should you be thinking about using a tool like WorkRamp, or to educate, to keep those employees engaged. So in other words, it's one thing to and critical to get employees engaged from the beginning for all the reasons, everything from time to value for an employee, and also in employee engagement. But how can education kind of continue that on, and continue to create engagement for the employee, but also value for the business?
So in today's world, it is critical that you're investing in your employees. It honestly, like, I know that we're not necessarily in the great resignation anymore, but like, if you think about what happened with the great resignation, people were just like, I'm going to go somewhere where I can like develop my career, where I'm going to get,
Yeah.
the advancement, the coaching, the upskilling that I need. And it's like table stakes now that you're investing in helping your employees, be high performing, but also advance their own personal skills. And so, I think that if you're not doing that, you're not going to be able to attract and retain top talent. And so, again, thinking through what are the experiences, the learning experiences, what are the skills that my employees need to learn, and putting out the right content, the right programming in order to help employees accelerate, in order to help them, up level where they need to. It is a benefit to the employee, but it is a benefit to the company, because obviously the more you're investing, right, and helping your employees get better, the better your company is going to perform. And then also it helps you literally retain talent because, people will go somewhere else if they're not getting what they need out of your company. And so I think, again, back to kind of something I said earlier, I think, training and like employee education in the past, right, might have had this connotation around like, oh, I just got to do this like annoying training thing just, in order to stay compliant at the organizational level. Now, programming and employee education, employee development, talent development is much more about like really helping up level skills and again, advance the career. So it's just, I think there's a huge shift. And I think honestly, like we believe that the best companies grow through learning. And you can see it because we work with some of the best, companies out there, high growth companies out there, companies like Reddit, like Outreach, are in our customer base. And it's because they're investing in, their employees through the right type of learning and development program. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's why it's
Yeah.
just so critical. And I think there's so many stats out there. I mean, gosh, I was just actually reading an article that said like 45% of employees said that they would stay at a company longer if they had the right talent and development opportunities. Like just goes back to that, retention of top talent, why you need to be doing this as well.
Yeah, and I think that's where, and I've done some work in this space as well, and there's sort of that idea of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, right? So the extrinsic stuff is like everybody needs a salary and they want bonuses and all those
Yeah.
things, but they're only beneficial to a point, and then they actually don't. They either don't work or sometimes they could even be counterintuitive, but there's a certain point where you kind of hit a wall and you can keep giving people raises, but they're not really gonna do any better or be more engaged. Yet things like learning and even mentoring other people and some of these other things, it doesn't always have to be altruism and volunteering for nonprofits. While those things are great, it can also be just what is my opportunity to grow and learn and accelerate my career
Yep.
and exactly what you're saying. If there's opportunity, there's more reason to stay there, right? So how do you recommend that? Certainly kind of the lagging indicators here would be retention and productivity perhaps, but how do you measure this in the moment and in a way that is helpful to make sure that when there are education programs in place, that leaders are utilizing them effectively and things like that?
Yeah. I mean, there are some definite parallels to what we talked about even during, the customer education
Yeah, yeah,
section. So one is just honestly engagement, right? So as a employee, well, onboarding, for example, you can take a satisfaction survey at the end of onboarding, like how confident are you feeling in, your role, or how confident are
yeah,
you feeling now X amount of time into, your new job. And that'd be a great indicator of, okay, how effective is that program? Same thing. Do you see a lot of engagement in your programming? Are people, going through the guides and paths that you've set up, within your LMS, within WorkRamp? Or what is their satisfaction rating? How confident are they feeling, after taking these different programs? But then think about again, sales is like a really great example of where you can actually tie it to like a pretty solid business outcome. You can look
right.
at, did someone onboard that went through onboarding? How quickly did they ramp? Like, how quickly did they get to quota, right? Are people that are doing the onboarding effectively, like, are they basically ramping more quickly? And then you can even do that ongoing. If you're rolling out different programs, again, thinking about like sales is a good example here. After they go through this training on the product, right? Like tying that back to their actual results. Of course, that's not the only factor in results, but like there's definitely correlation between, are people that are actually going through kind of these skill development courses or your development courses in general, are they performing better, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I think you can take moments too. Like if someone, for example, is promoted and they all of a sudden become a manager, they go through the manager training. What is in their next employee engagement survey? Like, how are they performing as a manager? Right. So there's definitely ways to tie basically these trainings to real business outcomes across the organization. And then, as you said, ultimately, You can look at things like, did you improve your retainment on, your overall employee base? Another interesting one I think to look at is like internal mobility. So,
Mm.
if you're rolling out like skills programs and things like that, are people going into different functions than the organization? Things like that are kind of like longer term North Stars that, L&D and people teams can look at and tie back to their L&D programming and training.
That's great. Yeah. Well, Jack, thanks for joining here. I've got one last question before we wrap up. You've given a lot of great advice already on both the employee side as well as the customer side. To kind of go back to the customer education topic for a second here, what's one piece of advice that you would have for brands that, they're listening to this today, they know they need to educate their customers better, but maybe not sure where to start? Well, where would you recommend they start?
Start small. It's kind of like anything, right? You don't need to boil the ocean from the beginning. Of course, that can seem very overwhelming if you're, sitting there and thinking, oh my gosh, I need to roll out a huge customer academy that has all of this
Yeah.
content. And that's a very overwhelming feeling. But you know what? You can start small with customer education. You can roll out one course that might help. Again, let's take onboarding, might help your customers onboard faster, and then continue to build from there and really better understand what type of content where customers are having challenges and just build on it. You don't need to have everything figured out from the beginning. It's just like anything. It's not, it's worth just starting and getting some insights, getting some data, getting the qualitative feedback and building on it. Don't feel like it has to be this huge undertaking. And, we see it with our customers all the time. Like once you get started, you want to build on it because you can see how just effective it can be for your business in terms of strengthening customer relationships, again, reducing churn, expanding customers, being able to sell them more, and then ultimately, making those customers brand advocates. So start small and just get started is my big piece of advice.
Nice, nice. That's great. Well, again, I'd like to thank Jack Foster, CMO at WorkRamp, for joining the show. You can learn more about Jack and WorkRamp by following the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.gregkihlstrom.com. That's GregKihlstrom.com. To get a copy of my latest book, House of the Customer, visit my website, or you can find it on Amazon or other retailers. The Agile Brand is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, stay agile.